In the cow-calf sector, there's some differences depending on the geography. In the southeastern part of the United States, so you saw that two of the top 10 states were Kentucky and Tennessee. The rest of the southeast states actually are relatively high cow-calf production states. And if you think about the geography down there, there's a lot of grass, there's abundant rainfall, but relatively small pastures because of higher density of human population, hills. I mean, just other reasons that the pastures are broken up into relatively small packages. So then what you see in that part of the United States, which is a pretty big percentage of the cows in the United States, is that they're in small herds, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 maybe. And so that creates problems as far as the transportation. So our trucks going down the highway carry 50,000 pounds. If I wean 500-pound calves, I need 100 of them to put on a truck. Well, I only have 30 cows. Half are heifers, half are steers. I keep some of my heifers. I'm far less than a truckload of a product to move to someone else. We don't have, so now I'm speaking as if I'm in the southeast. We don't have corn, so feed prices, if I wanted to feed, would be high because I'd have transportation costs. So feed is expensive. Rainfall is abundant. I don't really want to feed cattle, as in a feedlot, in an area where the rainfall is abundant. So I'm probably going to move them. And because I don't have truckload-sized family farms, I'm going to have to commingle or put several together. So from an animal health standpoint, for the cow-calf operation, I don't really have any transportation problems because I don't transport them until the time that they are weaned and take the next step. And as a cow-calf producer, historically, that has not been my problem. In other words, I'm speaking somewhat facetiously, but I sell the problem. So I sell them before they're transported. Therefore, any problems that the next guy might have is his problem, not mine. There is a desire to improve the communication and the price signal so that we share that problem a little bit more evenly, and that has been a challenge. So I would say from a transportation standpoint, most of the cow-calf sector doesn't directly deal with it, it's indirectly, and where that's going to move in the future, I'm interested to see.
I guess I'll take this from the researcher perspective. I spent 5 years chasing trucks all over, even into the US, and doing research on that. And I think, so what I think is you guys all brought up really valid points, but sometimes it actually does go well. There's variance in performance in transportation, and this is the fun of doing statistics with transport, what your replicate is and how many trucks you actually have to chase to figure out what the right factors are. And I think quite often maybe we forget to look at the factors that make it go well, like good handling, clean trucks, good people. I mean, I think Trent, you talked about Trent. You talked about empowering people, and I think that is probably the cornerstone of what you can do right with transportation, and to kind of solve the issue. I hate to be one of those people that's, transportation is awful and it's challenging and it's difficult, but it's also kind of, if you think of the beef industry like a system, I'm going to be a biologist, so I'm going to use your bodies, we all got one. It's like the veins that connects it all, right? So it's kind of that no man's land a little bit where it's not one single person's ownership of it, unless you're maybe a truck driver. But it's kind of everyone's connection, because if you were to cut that off, or if you were to challenge transport, and we see that a lot with animal welfare groups, particularly when you get comparing US to Europe, and should we go to European laws of 8 hours of transport and that's it, that would really change our industry completely. And I think sometimes what gets lost in that is, you can truck them for a good distance and still have it go okay. So it's maybe identifying those factors and drawing that out and saying that's what we need to do more of, or hey, we need to figure out how to capitalize on good truckers, on good truck design, airflow design, cleanliness, on reducing the stress of other factors like commingling, or how do you manage that stress so that it's not a problem. cattle are amazing animals. They'll cope with a lot if you give them the opportunity, and particularly from the research that we're seeing now is if you prep them right? You got to it's like getting ready for this is probably a really bad analogy, but it's like getting ready for a big game day, right? Or I'm saying it's a bad analogy. I'm not a sports person, so I'm going to try. It's like getting ready for a big game day. You got to eat right. You got to train right. You got to, kind of handle your stress appropriately. And I think maybe we could do that for our cattle a little bit more. It's a challenge given the people, like you said, Bob, around the different dynamics of the geographies and where cattle are coming from. But it is kind of that one thing for the industry that if we don't kind of improve it, or if we continue to be challenged on it, it could be a game changer.